In 1845, 2 ships entered the Arctic. There were 129 men aboard. Not one of them came home, but the expedition left evidence behind. Franklin was searching for a northern sea route through Canada. Britain hoped it would provide a shorter path to the Pacific. On the map, only a narrow gap remained. In reality, that gap was locked in ancient ice. Erebus and Terror left England on the 19th of May. At first, 134 men sailed with them. 5 were sent home from Greenland. The remaining 129 continued west. Heavy timber reinforced both hulls. Old railway engines powered their propellers. This plan shows how the sterns were rebuilt. For 1845, the ships were remarkably well equipped. Sir John Franklin commanded the expedition. The experienced polar captain, Francis Crozier, led Terror. James Fitzjames commanded Erebus. They had experience, but no guarantees. At Disco Bay, the crews loaded their final supplies. Boats carried coal, barrels and crates without pause. The last letters home left from here. After Greenland, contact almost disappeared. Whalers met both ships in Baffin Bay that July. Franklin was waiting for the ice to open. The crews looked healthy and the ships were sound. No European would see the expedition alive again. The first winter was spent on Beechey Island. The crews built workshops and a small shore camp. Work continued and discipline held. By spring, 3 new graves stood nearby. Stoker John Torrington died first. John Hartnell and William Braine followed. All 3 died within a few months. These are the expedition's first confirmed losses. The sun stayed below the horizon for months. The men read, repaired clothes, and staged plays. Below deck, the air was cold, wet, and cramped. Even routine work became harder. In summer, the ships moved south again. Their route survives only in a later note. Erebus and Terror passed Cornwallis Island. Then they approached King William Island. In September 1846, ice stopped both ships. They were trapped northwest of King William Island. The entire ice field carried them as it drifted. They would have to wait for another summer. Summer returned, but the passage stayed closed. The crew faced another polar night aboard ship. Supplies fell and the men weakened. A second winter became a third. Scurvy and infection may have struck together. Cold, hunger and exhaustion made everything worse. Lead was found in remains, but its role is still debated. There was probably no single cause. Franklin died on the 11th of June, 1847. The note gives no cause of death. Francis Crozier then assumed command. Britain would not learn this for another 12 years. On the 28th of May, 1847, sailors left a note in a cairn. They used a standard Admiralty form. At its centre are the calm words, "All well." The writers still believed the situation was under control. 11 months later, new writing appeared on the same sheet. It was crowded into the empty margins. Franklin and 23 others were dead. The ships had been deserted 3 days earlier. 105 survivors stepped onto the ice. Crozier and Fitzjames led them toward the Back River. The nearest trading post lay hundreds of kilometers away. No one from the group reached help. The sailors dragged boats and heavy sledges. Naval equipment was poorly suited to the tundra. Each mile consumed strength they no longer had. The journey grew worse as they moved south. Searchers found one boat in the spring of 1859. Inside were 2 skeletons and a mass of belongings. There were books, weapons, clothing, and silverware. Why weakened men carried it all remains unclear. Buttons, spoons, and scraps of cloth appeared along the coast. Every object added another point to the map. Inuit families passed several items to search parties. The expedition's full logbook was never found. Inuit witnesses saw Europeans walking south. The men could barely stand and were dragging a boat. Bodies and equipment were later found along that route. Oral history preserved what British archives did not. Inuit accounts also described an abandoned ship. One vessel ended up far south of the abandonment point, so it moved again after April 1848. Whether anyone was aboard is unknown. In 1854, John Ray recorded Inuit testimony. He also obtained objects that belonged to Franklin's men. For the first time, the final march had a coherent shape. London did not welcome the story. Ray reported signs of cannibalism among the dying men. Later bone studies supported parts of that testimony. Victorian Britain found the claim almost unbearable. The heroic myth proved stronger than the evidence. In 1850, the Admiralty announced a large reward. It offered money for rescue or reliable information. British and American ships joined the search. By then, there was probably no one left to save. In spring 1859, William Hobson found the note in a cairn. McClintock's expedition carried it back to Britain. 11 months separated its two brief messages. Most of the known disaster fits on this single sheet. The note does not name the final survivors. It does not say whether anyone returned to the ships, nor does it explain how Erebus travelled so far south. The main expedition journals are still missing. The wreck of HMS Erebus was found in 2014. HMS Terror was discovered 2 years later. The search combined modern equipment with Inuit knowledge. The story finally gained 2 exact points on the map. Both ships carried small steam engines and retractable propellers. The conversion forced shipwrights to rebuild their sterns. Coal consumed space that could otherwise hold provisions. The new technology helped, but only while the fuel lasted. The expedition carried provisions intended to last about 3 years. Much of the meat and soup was sealed in handmade tins. The quantity looked reassuring when the ships sailed. After years in the ice, preservation and rationing became matters of survival. Some recovered tins had rough seams and heavy solder. That once made the contractor an easy suspect in the disaster. Later research found lead exposure, but not a simple chain of cause and effect. The tins remain evidence, not a complete explanation. Scurvy develops when the body goes too long without vitamin C. It weakens tissue, reopens wounds, and makes infection harder to resist. Naval officers knew the danger, but stored lemon juice could lose strength. By the final march, several illnesses were probably acting together. Jane Franklin did not accept the Admiralty's early hesitation. She wrote letters, raised money, and kept the disappearance in public view. Her campaigns sent private expeditions back into the Arctic. They also helped turn Franklin into a Victorian national legend. The Admiralty offered £20,000 for an effective rescue. Smaller rewards were promised for information about the cruise. The notice drew ships and explorers from several countries. It could not bring the missing men back. By 1850, British and American ships were searching the Arctic together. Crews examined coasts, cairns, and stretches of frozen sea. Some search vessels became trapped and needed rescuing themselves. The hunt for Franklin grew into a vast polar campaign. The searchers failed to find survivors, but they charted enormous areas. Sledge parties filled blank coastlines and corrected older maps. A failed expedition had triggered a new age of Arctic surveying. That achievement came at a heavy human and financial cost. Modern archaeologists record every object before it leaves the seabed. Its exact position can reveal who used a space and how the ship changed. Cold water preserved timber, clothing, and fragile personal possessions. The wrecks are not treasure chests. They are sealed archaeological sites. In 2024, divers completed 50 working dives at HMS Erebus. They recovered a sextant, clothing, medicine bottles, and objects from a seaman's chest. A folded leather raincoat survived in the stern debris. Each item adds detail, but no single discovery has solved the final mystery. Both ships are found, but the story remains incomplete. Archaeologists continue to examine cabins and recovered objects. The order of the final events is still unknown. The Franklin case is not closed.